Hey there, welcome into the College Basketball Bracket Science YouTube channel and podcast network. I'm your host today, and we got a busy show. We're going to be talking about some of the results that just went on this past weekend, a always busy weekend during conference play. We're going to talk about our top 4 seeds following that. We'll also even include the 5 seeds, so this should probably say top 5 seeds. We're going to talk about some of the best teams in the country. We got some teams climbing into 2 seed contention that we're going to talk about. We also saw Michigan loss. How far will that drop them? We'll talk about that here in a little bit. Then we're going to talk rankings, my rankings, Kenpom Rankings, and the AP poll that was just released before previewing this week ahead. So we have a full show. Usually Mondays are for, strictly rankings, but I did just with all the movement that happened and all these big teams, a lot of these, top 4 seeds already picking up even bigger wins like Nebraska, who we'll talk about, even Vanderbilt. So we're going to discuss those with a little bonus bracketology, although it's not a full seed list, just your top seeds. Before diving into it, be sure to hit that like and subscribe button, turn on the post notifications. Hopefully, we're not going to have technical difficulties like we did last week. Luckily, we got through all the bracketology last week. Just in the game previews ended up having some technical difficulties, so apologies for that. That was the first time we've ever had that. Hopefully, it won't happen going forward. And also follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Bracket Science with 2S. Posting a bunch of fun stuff on there, a lot of Kenpom stats. This upcoming week, we're actually going to post teams in their respective conferences that have odd records. Some teams you might not have seen suffered a loss. This was inspired by, I didn't realize even Yale lost to Princeton just, a couple days ago. I didn't realize it. So I'm going to do a little special on that. So be sure to go check that out. All right, let's try and get through these, these games as quick as possible that happened last week, or this weekend, so that we can talk some bracketology and rankings. I won't dive in too deep to some of these smaller games. We do just want to note back on Friday, Miami of Ohio did win at Toledo. Toledo was favored in this game. So Miami of Ohio now 16-0 on the season, still undefeated. And then USC won at Minnesota. This was a pretty big one here for USC's at-large hopes, winning at Minnesota in overtime 70-69. Now let's talk about Saturday, which was the day to know. So we mentioned Michigan did lose at home. Number 2 team in the country, according to the AP poll, lost at home to Wisconsin. This is exactly what Wisconsin needed to kind of change the trajectory of their season. Coming into this game, I had them as a first 4 out team. Now with this win, this is the best win anyone's had in the entire country. Michigan's your top ranked team at Kenpom. Even with this loss, they're still number 1 at Kenpom. So this is the best win anyone's had in the country. Credit to Greg Gard and team there. John Blackwell had 26 points and Nick Boyd had 22 points playing his former coach, Dusty May. Obviously, both had different spots. Now Nick Boyd kind of been traveling around, but nice little moment at the end of the game where they, hugged it out. And good win for Wisconsin. For Michigan, we'll see going forward. They're going to run into some roadblocks along the way. They're obviously still fantastic, but will this team be like an Auburn of last year where they were so dominant to start and then, how much better can they really get? Just like how Auburn was last year. Can Michigan get much better? We'll see. Or will, teams start playing up to their level and starting to catch them? Has Michigan peaked, I guess would be another way to put it. I don't think so. I still think they have another level. God, we saw what a crazy level they can jump to. But even if they just start, winning games instead of winning games by, 40 plus once obviously Big Ten tournament comes around, an NCAA tournament, they'll be in just fine position there. But great win for Wisconsin. This says a lot about this Wisconsin team to go pick up that victory. All right, let's go down the graphic. So Texas wins at number 13 Alabama. Alabama goes 0-2 in this game. They're going to be on our teams with odd records in conference play because they're 1-2 in conference play. They lost to Vanderbilt. Now they lose at home to Texas. Texas is not in the NCAA tournament even after this win, at least in my opinion. I haven't done the full numbers yet, so I should maybe hold off on that. But I don't think they're all the way into the tournament. They weren't even like a next 4 out for me. But they pick up a huge win here for Sean Miller. Jordan Pope was fantastic. Had 28 points in this game. LeBaron Philon was fine for Alabama, but Alabama's, they're still just really lacking a truly elite. They need Grant Nelson back. Let's just say that. They need that sort of, stretch 4/stretch 5 that can also play down low and is just someone you have to guard. All respect to Aiden Sherrill and, Noah Williamson, who I just don't think plays up as fantastically as he could. And Bristow has been okay for Alabama. He showed signs early, but it's Aiden Sherrill is their guy, and he's been battling some injury. So we'll see about Alabama. Kind of just gonna wait and see how they figure it out. I don't think they're a national championship threat. I think they can be a Final Four threat. I mean, even a couple seasons ago, they were like only kind of a borderline Final Four threat, ended up making the Final Four as a 4 seed. So we'll see about Alabama, but good win for Texas in that one. Number 22, Kansas. Speaking of teams with bad conference records, now 1-2 in the Big 12 after losing at West Virginia, 86-75. West Virginia's beaten Kansas 3 times in a row. Kansas, had they not, somehow won the game against TCU, which they shouldn't have won, they ended up winning it in overtime. It was crazy. They would be 0-3 in the Big 12 right now. Weird stuff for Kansas. Darren Peterson did play, but still continues to have this injury that following him around. But let's talk about West Virginia. Good win under Ross Hodge, the first huge win under the Ross Hodge era. Honor Huff, the transfer from Chattanooga, the NIT champs last year, had 23 points in this one. Good for West Virginia. Hopefully they can get somewhere near the bubble. It's nice to see West Virginia, back in kind of meaning something after, Bob Huggins left and or didn't leave, but got fired and ended up being a little bit of a downhill trajectory for a little bit. But Ross Hodge is a good basketball coach, so good to see them picking up a good victory here. Up next, number 7, Houston wins at Baylor, 77-55. Very balanced scoring for Houston across the board. Baylor is zero match for any team with any sort of physicality, and unluckily for them, Houston might be the most physical team in the country. Them or Michigan State. I would say JoJo Tugler had a double-double in this one. Kingston Flemings continues to be awesome. Baylor just has no bigs. I know, the whole James and whatever his name is coming in was people. It's a big story. I understand it's a big story, but the impact on the court isn't going to be that huge, at least right now. And Houston just bullied them the entire way. Houston just so much better. Houston's still a national championship threat. Watch out for the Cougars sticking in the Big 12. Speaking of national championship threats, maybe the team to beat. Number 1, Arizona wins at TCU, 86-73. Arizona's just never in any trouble, it seems. Anytime you turn on a game, they're like, oh, they're up 12 already. This team just gets in control and controls the entire way. They're fantastic. They're now number 1 in strength of record. They actually passed Michigan in BPI. I'm not a huge BPI guy. They are still second in Kenpom and Torvik, both behind Michigan, but Arizona is a absolute juggernaut this year. They are absolutely fantastic. Moving along, Missouri and Ole Miss, just as Missouri was rolling, you can't lose to Ole Miss. This is not an Ole Miss team that is like NCAA tournament bound, not even close. They've been one of the most disappointing teams this entire season. Missouri started off SEC play with a win against Florida and a win against Kentucky. Now you lose to Ole Miss, kind of a tough one there for Dennis Gates and squad, but good win for Chris Beard's Ole Miss squad. Utah State goes to Boise State and dominates them. Boise State 1-4 in Mountain West play. Some people didn't realize that. I didn't realize how bad it has been. I thought they were still like fine, but Utah State's still undefeated in Big Ten in Mountain West play. Them and San Diego State are both undefeated, setting up what is going to be an incredible matchup. I'm not sure when they play, but that'll hopefully be an undefeated versus undefeated team and maybe get to a 2-bid Mountain West. But as of right now, Utah State looks like they're the only team that would be inside the NCAA tournament right now. San Diego State's close, but Utah State actually ranked in this week's AP poll. MJ Collins was really good in this particular game, had 25 points in the win at Boise State. Let's keep it moving. LSU played number 11 Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt continues to roll 84-73. I think Vanderbilt's better than Nebraska. Sorry, Nebraska, you're going to catch straight. Nebraska has been absolutely, we'll talk about Nebraska here in a little bit, but I think Vanderbilt just kind of has the pieces where they could be a national championship threat. I know Nebraska has been absolutely fantastic start the season. There's been a lot of, arguments on is Vanderbilt or Nebraska better. I lean Vanderbilt just the way they play, the style that they play. I don't know. Maybe it's just like, I'm not sure what it is because Nebraska's been fantastic and they're beating everyone on the road, at home, no matter what. Nebraska's been fantastic. Just something about this Vanderbilt team just sticks out to me. I think they can really, be the best team in the SEC by far, which they have been to this point. Oklahoma loses to Texas A&M 83-76. Texas A&M, there's 2 teams in the SEC that are undefeated right now. Vanderbilt, we just talked about, one of the best teams in the country, and Texas A&M under Buckyball 3-0 to start SEC play. How about that? Really good start for this A&M squad. Oklahoma falling their way off of the bubble. Moving up to the top of the graphic, number 21 Tennessee played Florida, a game that is always a blowout no matter which direction it is. Florida drilled them last year, and then Tennessee came back and drilled them last season. And then Florida gets the better of Tennessee this year with a 24-point victory. Ruben Chinyelu with a crazy stat line, 17 points, 16 rebounds. Boogie Fland, also credit where credit's due, was very good in this game, had 23 points. Xavier Lee was serviceable. Klarvjar coming off the bench was actually very good as well. So if they can get good production from the guards, we know what their front court is. We know Tommy Hauck's awesome and Alex Condon's really good. You got Chinyalu, who has fantastic games like this. Florida, in my opinion, they're the second best team in the SEC. I think it's Vanderbilt, then Florida. I don't even know if that's like an argument. I think that's just how it is. Kentucky hasn't shown to be, anywhere near that. Alabama has suffered these past 2 losses. Tennessee is like, it's weirdly not a physical team. At least just when I watch it, I'm like, this team just doesn't have that gritty toughness like most Tennessee teams have. Jacoby Gillespie is absolutely incredible, but I think Florida and Vanderbilt are going to be your 2 teams at the end vying for an SEC regular season championship. I thought Arkansas would definitely be my pick as like the 3rd best team right now, but they did lose at Auburn. This was a beautiful spot for Auburn. Auburn was 0-2 in the SEC. Coming in this game, desperately needed a victory, and they got a great one from Keyshawn Hall, 30 points, 11 of 14 from the field, 4 of 5 from 3. Todd Pettiford was also fine. Keyshawn Murphy had a double-double in this game, but Keyshawn Hall could be the SEC Player of the Year. He has been awesome. Darius Acuff for Arkansas has also been fantastic. You got to look at the Vanderbilt guys. Tyler Tanner, who had another good game in their game against LSU. LeBaron Philon's obviously going to be up there for Alabama, but so it's like it's all going to depend on these standings at the end of the season. I think Arkansas, give me like 11-7 in the SEC, and Auburn 9-9, 10-8 in the SEC. So if they can get to 11-7, maybe Keyshawn Hall could be your SEC Player of the Year. I think both teams will be tournament teams that are dangerous because both can really score the ball. But good win for Steve Pearl, his first SEC win. Ranked on ranked matchup at the time, number 24 SMU traveling to number 6 Duke. Duke, this was kind of just a boring game in my opinion. I watched a lot of this game and it was just kind of like Duke led pretty much, just kind of controlled, but it wasn't like ever a blowout. They won 82-75. Cam Boozer continues to be awesome. Isaiah Evans was great. SMU, perfectly fine. You hung with Duke at Duke, and, you're not used to being in the ACC. You were in the American a couple years ago. Now you go to Cameron Indoor and, compete with them. Boopie Miller's fantastic, but Duke does get the victory there. And then speaking of Nebraska, they go to Indiana and beat them. They were 4.5-point underdogs, even against at an unranked team at Assembly Hall, but they go in and beat them 83-77. Jamarcus Lawrence had 27 points, 5 of 8 from 3. It's just one game after another. They pick you off. I don't know what it is about Nebraska, how like, it's like one guy. It's always one guy. It's Price Sanford one day. It's Jamarcus Lawrence in this game. Rank Mast is definitely their best player. He's fantastic, but they just beat you. They have every resume thing that you would want. You want a road win against the top team? Well, they won at Illinois. Illinois is beating everyone's brains in right now. They just beat Iowa at Iowa. They got that win. They got the win against Michigan State, who's another top team, really physical team. They have the road wins at Ohio State, now at Indiana. At Indiana, one of the toughest places to play. And they just continue to step up to it. I know there's been like a lot of talk, like, is this the best team in the country? Are they like national championship threats? I don't know. I'm not even going to act like I do know. I don't know. It's just, is it the Nebraska name where it's like, is it the lack of 5-star talent? I'm not sure why they're not like this could very well be a team that is like number 3 in the AP poll. I would have them as a 2 seed right now. We'll talk about them here in a little bit, but they are first in wins against bubble. That means give everyone, their schedule that they've played in accordance to the bubble. How are you doing against, the bubble? They are first. They are first in this new metric that is seeming to be one of our better metrics that we have in college basketball. They're also second in strength of record. Remember, we talked about Arizona first. They're second in strength of record. Now, the reason people are holding back is like, is this the best team in the country? Is this a top 3 team in the country? Is the predictives. So they're 17th at Kenpom right now. They're 19th at Torvik, 23rd in the BPI. So that if you're like, why is this team not a 1 seed? That's the reason, because the predictive metrics do influence seeding a lot. So it's how much do you balance that? That's, the tough part of bracketology. But at some point you just got to look at the results and say, this team's awesome. They're obviously awesome. One of the more notable teams that it was on a much lesser scale than this was South Carolina a couple of years ago when they were the 6th seed, but they were like right around 50th at Kenpom. Remember, they got beat by, who did they get beat by? Did they play Oregon in the first round a couple years ago in that 6-11 game where Oregon ended up beating them, and Oregon was actually favored? That's because of the predictive metrics. So if you see Nebraska being a 4.5-point underdog at Indiana, that's the reason. The predictives are what influence the betting line. So it's basically it's a key contributor to how good is this, how good is this team. But at some point, they're just winning everything. So good for Nebraska. They are into the top 10. Hopefully they win an NCAA tournament game this year because they should. They're tracking towards a protected top 16 seed. All right, let's move on. Mississippi State and Kentucky. Kentucky gets the job done 92-68. Mississippi State, I talked about them on the last podcast. I'm like, maybe I was wrong about this team. They've been playing well, and then they just got drilled by Kentucky. Otago was good in this one. Let's move on. Kentucky did beat St. John's earlier in the season, but St. John's wins at Creighton in this game in a big one. St. John's your second best team in the Big East, in my opinion. 90-73. Seton Hall's also right there. Villanova's right there. I still think it's St. John's. You see the capability in a game like this where they can go and dominate. They have the pieces, but we'll see going forward. I should mention, I forgot I have this on here, but for Indiana, I know we talked about Nebraska. Jamarcus Lawrence had 27 points. Lamar Wilkerson did have 32 points, so he had a really good game in this one. Indiana's best, one of their best players, him or Tucker DeVries. Sorry, going back and forth. But let's go down to a rivalry game. Number 9, BYU at Utah. BYU got the job done 89-84. Richie Saunders has been fantastic. 24 points, 14 rebounds in this one. DeBanza also had 20. Rob Wright has had 20 as well. Maybe the best big three in the entire country. They're fantastic, and they're playing well together. That's a credit to Kevin Young. They're playing well together. Utah, we'll see about next year. Oklahoma State played number 3 Iowa State. No trouble for Iowa State. This should be obviously Iowa State's 1 seed right now, but Oklahoma State should be in the NCAA tournament as of now. Iowa State wins 83-71, and then Stanford loses at Virginia 70-55. There's a real world that Virginia might be the second best team in the ACC. This team could win the ACC. We'll talk about them here in a little bit when we talk about our bracketology, because they're going to be a little bit better than you might think. All right, let's move on to Sunday, where only a couple games, mostly in the Big Ten. Number 16, Illinois did win against number 19, Iowa, which we just talked about. Iowa has since dropped out of the polls. Illinois is fantastic. Keaton Wagler continues to be just an absolute stud. Tommy Avicic is also one of my favorite players in the Big Ten. Ohio State loses at Washington, 81-74. Washington desperately needed this win to, try and stay on the bubble. Ohio State keeps fluctuating as like a last 4 team in, first team out sort of thing. And they kind of choked away this game in the second half, but credit to Washington. They played well, and they played really well when Desmond Claude didn't play. The announcers were saying it. This has kind of been, kind of a thought of mine where it's like, I think Desmond Claude is a little bit I talk a lot about Texas, how and they just picked up a big win. So maybe, maybe it's biting back at me a little bit, but I've said, I don't really love Texas's roster construction, which once again, no discredit to Sean Miller. This isn't the players that he got. This is the guys that Rodney Terry has that are still here. But it's a lot of just one-on-one basketball, your turn, my turn sort of thing. That's kind of how Desmond Claude plays. He's kind of similar to that, and he didn't play a lot in the second half, and Washington went on a big run, so maybe that's saying a little something. Desmond Claude, obviously a great individual player, as are those Texas guys, but when you're looking at roster construction, that is a big piece. But Washington, somewhere on the bubble. Ohio State also right there as hovering, whether they're in or out, we'll see in a couple days when I crunch the numbers. Memphis played FAU. FAU kind of just gave it to them, 89-78. Memphis, for anyone who watched this game, those announcers really hated Memphis. They did not seem to like them. But Memphis, this is their first loss in the American this season. Both teams going to have to obviously win their conference to get a bid into the NCAA tournament. And then Rutgers did beat Northwestern. Let's move on and talk about our top 5 seeds, which we'll label it here. Now, there are going to be a couple teams that you're going to see here and be like, where is that team? Where is Arkansas? That's going to be the big one I'm going to hear. I'll talk about them. But let's talk about these top 5 seeds at first. Number 1 overall seed, now that Michigan suffered that loss, would be Arizona. UConn as your number 2 overall seed. They have tremendous resume average, 2nd in wins above bubble, and 4th in strength of record with good predictives as well. Michigan, I still have as a 1 seed. They're number 1 at Kenpom, number 1 at Torvik, would have them right there. And then Iowa State as your 4th number 1 seed. Done absolutely nothing wrong. Bona fide national championship threat. I'm not going to talk this deep about these teams' resumes because that's going to be saving for our Friday show. But I got Purdue as your next number 1 seed, your first number 2 seed. Purdue, like we've said, they're kind of being overlooked right now. Purdue and Houston, they were your top 2 teams in the preseason AP poll. And let me just actually take a look real quick. Purdue is 15-1, and Houston is also 15-1. Not a lot of people are talking about them, so they've lived up to expectation. However, there's not a ton of people talking about them. But Purdue as a 2 seed. I would also have Vanderbilt as the next 2 seed. I would have them above Nebraska, because we talked about those predictives and how they do influence seeding. Nebraska's 17th at Kenpom, 19th at Torvik, like we said. Vanderbilt's 5th at Kenpom and 3rd at Torvik with, an average of 4.3 resume compared to 2.3 for Nebraska. So the resume better for Nebraska, but to me, those predictive metrics are a little bit too much better for to lift Vanderbilt above Nebraska, in my opinion. Then Duke is your last number 2 seed. Now, Duke fans are going to be like, why do we keep moving back? BYU, I'm so sorry. We're going to talk about BYU a little bit more in depth when we get to our rankings, because BYU has just done absolutely nothing wrong. I know I'm kind of flying all over the place here. Like, they're 15-1, and in my rankings, they're like moving down, and they're also moving down in the AP poll. And even at Kenpom, they're moving down. It's just because we have such a big crop of fantastic teams like the Vanderbilts, the Nebraskas. None of these teams, there's so many one-loss teams. I don't remember a time many 0-loss and 1-loss teams at this point in the season. So same kind of goes for Duke, as they're kind of just like falling back a little bit. They're 8th at Kenpom. Believe it or not, they're 14th at Torvik right now. However, they do have they have 7 quad 1 wins, which is the most in the country by 2, I believe. Now they are 7-1 in quad 1. So, got to be a 2 seed in my opinion, as having the most quad 1 wins in the country. Up next, Gonzaga, kind of in the same boat as BYU and Duke, just not doing anything wrong, but teams are going to pass them, especially being in the WCC. Teams are going to pass them, but teams are also going to fall behind them when they lose. So got Gonzaga as a 3 seed. Houston, like we said, they're beating everyone. They just beat Baylor by 1 million. They're still a national championship threat. We just have so many national championship threats right now. Same goes for BYU. I promise BYU, I'll give you some love because they deserve it. I know BYU fans are like, we could easily be the number 1 team in the nation right now if we just don't, if we lost by 2 in Boston to UConn. Without that, it's like, I don't know. They're not getting a lot of love. They're not getting as much love as they should. They're fantastic. Michigan State is your next number 3 seed. These 3 seeds kind of set in stone, in my opinion. Up next would be Illinois as your first number 4 seed. They just beat Iowa pretty badly. They are actually up to 7th at Kenpom, 7th at Torvik as well. The predictives really like them. They are a really good basketball team. Don't sleep on Illinois too much. Up next would be Alabama. I know people are going to say, like, Alabama, how can they still be here? It's because their strength of schedule. They're 14th at Kenpom still. They're 11-5. And as a 4 seed, this is kind of similar to what their team was that made the Final Four a couple seasons ago. They just play such a tough schedule that you have to look past the win-loss column. They've played the toughest schedule in the entire country, according to Kenpom. And they're going to, it's not going to get much easier come SEC play, as they've already shown. They're 1-2 in the SEC. However, with that strength of schedule and with the wins they've picked up, I would still actually a clear cut ahead of Texas Tech, North Carolina, and the 5 seeds. So Texas Tech as your next number 4 seed. Kind of were written off to start the season, but after that win against Duke are right there as well. They've been really good. 2 of the best players in the country, Christian Anderson, JT Toppin, and Alon Watts have been playing better. North Carolina is your final number 4 seed. Did beat Wake Forest this weekend. Haven't really been beating teams badly, which is what is hurting their predictive metrics. For example, they're 33rd at Kenpom, 27th at Torvik. However, resume a little bit better than that. This North Carolina team has one of the best front courts in the country. I like this team. Up next as a 5 seed, Virginia. So we said they're going to be a little higher than you might think. They have done a lot to help their resume over the past couple weeks. So they're 20th in KPI, 21st in strength of record, 22nd in wins against bubble. That's pretty good. And they are, let me find them here, 15th at Kenpom and 12th at Torvik. The predictives love this team. They have every piece that looks like a team that is an elite team. This is a dark horse Final Four team. Do not get shocked if you see Virginia as like a 4 seed come March Madness. They're a popular pick to be a 1 seed. They're a very good basketball team. Clemson up next as a 5 seed. What else can you say about Clemson? They're awesome. They're picking up win after win in the ACC. They still haven't lost in the ACC. Them and Duke. Actually, Miami, Florida as well. Your 3 undefeated teams in the ACC. They're 4-2 inside quad 1, 3-1 in quad 2, 7 quad 1 plus quad 2 wins. That's one of the better, better margins in the entire country. Next up, Villanova as a 5 seed also have done really well under, very similar resume to Clemson. However, I would have them a little bit behind Clemson as their resume and predictive metrics are just a little bit worse. And then Florida, right back up here. Florida with a weird one because their resume-based metrics aren't too awesome, but the predictives really like them. And the predictives, we've seen how important they are. They're 11th at Torvik and 12th at Kenpom. They're also 15th in the net. So this Florida team is, they're right there as one of the best teams in the SEC. And then I do just want to mention Arkansas because I know I'm going to get some Arkansas fans, maybe Louisville fans as well. But Louisville, their resume is not near as good as you might think. I would have them as a 6 seed, as would I have Arkansas. I don't know why Arkansas's resume is not as good as I really thought it was. They're 16th in strength of record, 18th in wins against bubble. That's pretty good. Predictives are not good at all. 30th in in BPI, 30th in Kenpom, and 28th at Torvik. That's not too fantastic, especially when they're they're right there with the likes of like North Carolina, but North Carolina's resume-based metrics are a lot better, 16.3 average compared to Arkansas's 23. So that's a big difference there for similar predictives. They're just not all the way there yet. And then you add in the likes of like Villanova. Villanova compared to Arkansas's resume, Villanova a little bit ahead in the resume-based metrics, and they're just about dead equal in predictive based metrics. So I'm going to go with Villanova just with the slight edge over them. And then Florida, obviously, with the predictives are well up there as well. So Arkansas, I would probably have as the first 6 seed, with Louisville following right behind. I knew I was going to get some about that. And then, believe it or not, Kansas is actually right there too. I'd probably have them as the next 6 seed. All right, that is the top seeds as it stands right now. Next up, we're going to dive into our rankings. So be sure to see us on the other side of the break. We're going to talk rankings. We'll see you in a second. It is nearly impossible to find affordable golf instruction. Well, not any longer. Introducing virtual swing reviews by PGA certified Brandon Jadich Golf Instruction. Just send a video of your swing to receive feedback to fix your swing in minutes. You don't need a $100 hour-long lesson when the instructor knows how to correct your habits after just one swing. Follow Brandon Jadich Golf Instruction on Instagram with the link below in the description, and send a message saying swing review for just a $10 swing review, or comment under this YouTube video saying swing review. 2026 is a year of saving money and improvement. So start now with this limited time offer to grow your. Alrighty, let's talk rankings. After Michigan loses, I dropped them down to number 3. I got Arizona at number 1, Iowa State at number 2, which is equal with the AP poll, which we'll talk about here in a second. Michigan at 3. I did keep Michigan ahead of UConn. I think UConn's right there. I've said for a while, I think UConn's going to end up being the team to beat come March Madness time. Purdue at number 5. I got Vanderbilt all the way up to number 6. Like I said, I'm a little higher on Vanderbilt than I am Nebraska. Both are awesome, but I'm going to go with Vanderbilt at number 6 and Houston at number 7. Duke, sorry, you didn't do anything wrong. You just beat Louisville, but I did move Vanderbilt up and Houston after beating, Baylor's brains in. Nebraska moving up, sorry. So that means Gonzaga and BYU have to fall. BYU has been so good. I hate having them as 11th best team in the country. If this was last year, they'd be like 4th or 5th. There just happens to be so many great teams, maybe the best trio in the entire country. Michigan State at 12, Illinois at 13. Illinois is a bona fide Final Four threat. 14, I got North Carolina, with Arkansas being right behind them at 15. See, Arkansas, I do like you. The resume just isn't as good as I thought it was. I'm not sure why. I think this is one of the best teams in the SEC. Texas Tech right behind them, with Virginia at number 17. I love this Virginia team. Just bet them to make the Final Four, but their odds have been, slowly starting to, not be as good because, they're like plus maybe 800 now, depending on what sportsbook you're looking at, and that's tough to that's up there. Next up is Florida at number 18. I think this team is still really good. We'll see about what they can do with that with the backcourt. The team I'm not concerned about the backcourt, but I am concerned about the front court is their rivals. One of their rivals in the SEC, Alabama at number 19, didn't drop them too far. Like we said, they have some really good wins, but they also have 5 losses, as does Florida. Up next, Utah State at number 20, our first mid-major that we'll talk about here. They have been absolutely fantastic to start this entire season. Jared Calhoun, what can you say? Utah State, just an absolute incredible program. I hope they don't lose Jared Calhoun, but he looks like he'll be a power conference coach somewhat soon. Clemson right behind him. Clemson not getting a lot of love. Actually, I do believe they're ranked in this week's AP poll, but they're very underrated, undefeated in the ACC, like we said. Georgia right behind them. Don't really know what to do with Georgia because they have been, they haven't really picked up any real elite win other than the Auburn win. Outside of that, but they're beating everyone's brains in. So got to keep them ranked, in my opinion. 23, I have Louisville right behind them. Like I said, resume not as good as you might think. Haven't beaten as many teams as you might think that are, truly viewed as elite teams. Let me pull it up here. So they did beat Kentucky, as mentioned. That one hasn't aged as well. Cincinnati is no good. They did beat Cincinnati, though. They beat Indiana, which was kind of the big one there. That's probably their best win of the entire season. And they won at Cal, but nothing too awesome. But still really good team. We see the potential with Louisville. Up next is St. Louis. I'm going to get them in here at 24. Robbie Avila, Josh Schertz. They won at VCU this past week, which is a huge win in the A10. St. Louis is a threat to be a, Loyola Chicago-ish kind of team. 25, I did keep Iowa ranked. I don't like it, but I did end up keeping them ranked. I don't know what to think about this Iowa team. It's like every time I watch them, I'm like, this team just doesn't look that good. But then every time I don't watch them, they compete with Iowa State. I wasn't able to catch that game, or they beat someone else that's really good. And it's just like, I can't figure them out yet. I kept them at 25. I know they're good. I just don't know how good. And then my next 5, I would have Auburn, St. Mary's, Tennessee, Villanova, and Seton Hall. So let's talk about how does this compare to the AP poll. This graphic is going to be just courtesy of Fox because I don't make AP poll graphics anymore. Once it hits like after week 6, I'm like, all right, I'm done with this. The AP poll is, I do like the AP poll. I've said it a million times because I like to see the numbers next to the name, but it's just, I'd rather do my own rankings or, look at the Kenpom rankings, but it does matter for the name next to the number next to the name. Arizona 1, Iowa State 2, UConn 3, Michigan 4, Purdue 5, pretty much the same as me. They do have Duke at 6 still, and Houston at 7. Nebraska jumps up to number 8 with Gonzaga being 9, Vanderbilt 10, BYU down to 11. I'm so sorry, BYU. They're good. Michigan State at 12, Illinois at 13. So same top 13 as me. The AP poll is getting better. Let's say that they're doing well. I'm not just saying that because it's close to mine, but they have been. It's pretty obvious that they actually maybe sort of watch college basketball now. 14, North Carolina, 15, Texas Tech, 16, Virginia, 17, Arkansas, 18, Alabama, 19, Florida, 20, Louisville, 21, Georgia, 22, Clemson, 23, Utah State. So I have all top 23 teams ranked. I have Tennessee and Seton Hall, who are the next to a Navy poll, in my next up. So they're right there. I like this ranking. Don't mind it whatsoever. Now let's talk about the Kenpom rankings because these might be a little bit different than you might think. Michigan is still number 1, even with that loss, although it is by a thread now over Arizona, Iowa State right there. Purdue, Vanderbilt, Gonzaga, Illinois is 7. Like I said, Illinois is a really good basketball team. They're 3rd in offensive efficiency, 16th in defensive efficiency. That was a big concern coming into the season. How would they defend? They've lived up to it so far. Duke up next at number 8. Weird seeing Duke that low. I know that's crazy, and that's a credit to John Shire, but we've seen them, last year they were just number 1 forever. Maybe that's what it is. UConn is down at number 9. This is a little bit weird to me. I'm not sure why. They're 5th in defensive efficiency and 24th in offensive efficiency. I think their offense is better than their defense, but obviously, Kenpom argues that. Houston down at number 10. BYU still at number 11. 11 across the board, but they're still awesome. Florida is number 12. Like we talked about, the computers do like them. They think they're a really good team, which is why you'll see them favored in a lot of games. Michigan State is 13. Alabama's 14, with the number I want you to look at for Alabama. Their defensive efficiency, they're 2nd in offensive efficiency, 77th in defensive efficiency. That is not good enough. They don't have a true rim protector outside of Aiden Sherrill. Virginia at number 15, so they're liked by me, and they're liked by the computers. Louisville 16. Nebraska is 17, so like I said, the computers don't like them as much. They think it's a little bit fluky, but at some point they just beat everyone. So Nebraska, definitely not the 17th best team in the country. St. John's is up at 18th. That win at Creighton by 1 million is going to really boost those rankings. Tennessee 19, Utah State 20. See, Iowa's 21st, so it's not crazy to have them ranked inside my top 25, at least in my opinion. I don't know why they're 21st, quite frankly, but I do. Part of my rankings is, it's a mix of AP poll style, it's a mix of Kenpom rankings, and it is a mix of resume. So I would have them as probably like a 7 seed right now. So that's right about there. Texas Tech is behind Iowa, which is strange to me, but that is exactly what it is. Kansas still up at 23. NC State is 24. I wanted to get NC State back in the rankings, but the resume just isn't there. Villanova 25, Kentucky 26, Indiana 27, Georgia 28, Clemson 29, and Arkansas is 30. Like I said, the resume predictives just aren't that great for this Arkansas squad. Auburn's at 31, SMU 32. North Carolina, like I said, they don't like them either. They're 33rd. St. Louis 34, and St. Mary's 35. So that's the Kenpom rankings. Now let's just talk about the upcoming week, the games to know for this upcoming week. Tuesdays and Wednesdays have been awesome. That's the only 2 days we're going to talk about. We're recording this Monday, by the way. It'll release Tuesday morning. Ranked on ranked matchup starting on Tuesday. Number 16, Virginia at number 20, Louisville. Maybe the battle for, North Carolina's in there. So, 2 of the top 4 teams in the ACC. Clemson, don't sleep on Clemson as well. Louisville is favored by 3.5 at home in that one. They need it. Will Michael Brown Jr. play in this one? I haven't heard, but these are, actual betting lines, not the Kenpom lines because they are out already. But Louisville favored by 3.5 in that matchup. 7 o'clock on Peacock. Indiana coming off a loss goes to number 12, Michigan State. Michigan State favored by 6.5. 2 very different styles here. Michigan State is, they've just been getting Jeremy Fears out and pick and roll and just letting him make plays. Indiana is one of the best defenses in the country that forces mid-ranges. So I'm curious to see how many mid-ranges this Michigan State team shoots. Darian DeVries' defensive scheme is very good. So I'm curious to see how well Michigan State does against this Indiana team, and will they be able to defend the 3? I think it's actually a decent spot for Indiana, but I am a little concerned about just how good this Indiana team is because Michigan State is going to kill them with physicality in this game. I don't think Indiana has anyone that is even close to being able to match up with Michigan State's bigs. So the spot and a little bit of the scheme, I would say, leads towards Indiana, but personnel-wise definitely leans towards Michigan State. Up next, 7 o'clock on the SEC Network, Texas A&M. Remember, like I said, undefeated still in the SEC at number 24, Tennessee. Tennessee favored by 9.5 in that game, though, coming off of the loss. 7 o'clock on the Big Ten Network. Wisconsin coming off the best win of the season. Goes to Minnesota, which has been sneaky good in year 1 under Nico Medved. Has picked off a couple teams, picked off Iowa and Indiana so far this season. 8 o'clock on True TV. Number 3, UConn. They always struggle with Seton Hall. They always seem to struggle, but UConn is favored by 5.5 on the road. Seton Hall ranked, like we said, number 25, so ranked on ranked matchup. Going to be a very fun one there. 8:30 on FS1. West Virginia at number 7, Houston. Houston favored by 11.5. I'm curious if Houston just shuts down this West Virginia offense. I have a feeling West Virginia, this is going to be a little bit of a prediction here. I'll say West Virginia is under 50 points in this game. I think Houston is just going to dominate them because West Virginia is going to get the respect and the scout team on this team after beating Kansas, and Houston's defense is just going to shut down these guards. I really believe it, but maybe West Virginia and Ross Hodge can surprise us. 9 o'clock on ESPN, number 2, Iowa State goes to Allen Fieldhouse, take on now unranked Kansas. Iowa State favored by 3.5 on the road, which is just crazy. Anyone's any favorite on the road at Kansas anymore, but that's just what it is. Been the past couple seasons for this Kansas team. Iowa State, fantastic. Josh Jefferson, one of the best players in the entire country and the most underrated player in the country. And Darren Peterson should be a lot of fun. 9 o'clock on the CBS Sports Network, sticking in the Big 12. Baylor and Oklahoma State, 2 teams I think would be outside the tournament right now. I think Baylor would be on the outside looking in. I haven't fully done the look, but I believe they were my last team in. And with playing against Oklahoma State, Oklahoma State's hovering right around there too. So this is a big game for both teams. Baylor's favored by 1.5 on the road. 9 o'clock ESPN2, now ranked number 19, Florida goes to Oklahoma. Oklahoma is in desperate need of a victory, but Florida's favored by 4.5 on the road. 9 o'clock SEC Network, number 18, Alabama, in desperate need of a rebound win here, going to Mississippi State. So LeBaron Philon, Josh Hubbard, can't ask for much more than that. Mississippi State is an underdog by 7.5 points in that one. And then 9 o'clock on the Big Ten Network, undefeated Nebraska hosts Oregon. Oregon is terrible, by the way. For anyone not paying attention, Nebraska favored by 11.5 in that one. Let's move on to Wednesday, which is also another good day. 6:30 on the Big Ten Network. Number 5, Purdue takes on Iowa. So we got Bennett Sturts versus Braden Smith. Can't ask for a much better matchup than that. Purdue favored by 10 in this one via Kenpom. These are going to be Kenpom lines. 7 o'clock, ESPN2. Auburn at Missouri. Auburn favored by 1 on the road. Missouri is very bubbly. Very, very bubbly. Auburn comfortably in, probably is like a 7-ish seed right now. So Auburn coming off of that big win. We'll see if they can keep it going. But Missouri is in need of some wins because of a weak non-conference schedule. 7 o'clock on the SEC Network, Kentucky and LSU. LSU favored by 1. LSU has been falling off like crazy. Who'd they just lose to? Vanderbilt. They just played Vanderbilt. Now they get to host Kentucky. Kentucky in need of wins, as is LSU. Both also very bubbly. 8 o'clock, Peacock. UCF, now unranked after their loss last week, travels to Kansas State. Kansas State favored by 1 in that matchup. At 9 o'clock on ESPN2, number 10, Vanderbilt goes to Texas. Vanderbilt's favored by 7 on the road to Texas. The number won't be that big. This is the Kenpom line, but it'll be like 4.5, 5.5. We'll see if Vanderbilt can stay undefeated with a tough test against a Texas team who maybe is starting to find something. Next up on the ACC network, 9 o'clock, number 14 North Carolina at Stanford. Stanford sneaky on the bubble team. Don't be surprised if Stanford ends up being like a Dayton team playing in the first four. North Carolina favored by 2 on the road. That should tell you that the Stanford team pretty legit. 9 o'clock ESPNU, Virginia Tech just on the outside looking in right now at SMU. SMU favored by 8 in that one, coming off the loss to Duke. Then at 10:30, God, I hate late games on the Big Ten and the ACC. California, Washington, making these late games on the East Coast. Number 4 Michigan at Washington. Michigan favored by 12. We'll see if they can rebound in this game. Arizona State at number 1 Arizona. I had to include it because it is a big rivalry game. This game is definitely skewed towards, or heavily favored towards Arizona. They're favored by 22 points in a rivalry game. Arizona State's been falling off a cliff. Arizona's number 1 team in the country. That's 10:30 FS1, 22-point favorite there. 11 o'clock on the AC network, even later, we get number 6 Duke at Cal. Cal is a bubble team, but have been struggling in the start of ACC play. See if Duke can stay undefeated. They're favored by 10 on the road. And then 11 o'clock ESPN2. Let's give BYU some love. They deserve it. A number 11 now, favored by 13 at home against TCU, a team just on the outside looking in. So these games a lot of them have bubble implications. A lot of them have seed line implications. We're getting to the point in the season where every game is crucial. That's going to do it for the show today. I know we were kind of all over the place and I'm battling a little bit of an illness. So if it was a little more boring than usual, I apologize. But we're just trying to get through this winter season and get me to February and March, where we can continue to talk conference play and we can talk March Madness time. Bracketology is in full swing, so be sure to come back for that. Our Friday show will be a full field of 68. So be sure to like before you head out, subscribe to the show, turn on the post notifications, and follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Bracket Science with 2 S's. We'll talk to you again on Friday where we're talking bracketology. Enjoy this rest of the week of ball. Till then, take care.